NFL Week 3 is now officially in the books, another great week of football. So we're going to be talking about every game from Week 3 and looking at how my predictions did. I had a slightly better week this week than Week 2, where I went 8-8. This week I went 9-7, so a little better. We're going to talk about all the games now, so let me know down in the comments how your picks did for the week, and did your team win? How's your team doing this year? So obviously we kicked things off with that Thursday night game between the Patriots and the Jets. I did pick the Jets in this one. However, I did think it was going to be a lot more competitive just based off of what I saw the Patriots do in their first two games of the season, beating Cincinnati week 1 and then going to overtime with Seattle. I thought, they're still not going to win a lot of games, but they're going to be a lot more competitive. They're going to be very scrappy. They still kind of have that defensive culture that Belichick left behind and now continued by Gerard Mayo. But I think it was on full display. All the problems I've had with New England, why I harped on them so much in the offseason about being bad. Yeah, they were scrappy the first 2 weeks, but this is more of who the Patriots are, and that is just a disaster, an absolute train wreck. They can't move the ball. They have the worst receiver core in the NFL. Jacoby Brissett's just far too limited, and even though I like some of their defensive players, they're just too limited from a roster perspective to really compete week in and week out. So I really think those first 2 games to start off the year were kind of fool's gold. I don't believe in that at all. I still think the Patriots are comfortably in that race for the number 1 overall pick. So I think the Jets really came out here and exposed the Patriots for what they really were, 24-3. So I did pick that one right. That puts my record at 1-0 for Week 3. Getting into the Sunday slate of games now, here's one I got massively wrong, and I'm pretty sure majority of the country, outside of people living in Denver, Colorado, got this one wrong, and that was the Broncos going to Tampa Bay to play the Bucs. I thought the Bucs would crush them. Just based off the first 2 weeks, Tampa looked like one of the elite teams. They looked like a legitimate Super Bowl contender based off those first 2 weeks where they just crushed the Commanders week 1. Baker had the best performance of any quarterback in week 1. I think he threw like 4 touchdowns. And then week 2, they beat the Lions. And the Lions, you can say what you want. They don't look as good this year as they did last year. But they're still one of the most talented teams in the NFL. And they went to Detroit and beat the Lions. So they were rolling high. I think maybe what happened here is that maybe they just overlooked them. They weren't trying as hard in practice. They're like, we got the lowly Broncos. Who gives a shit? We're at home. We're a better team. We're going to kick their ass. And I think that's what happened, honestly. They just overlooked the Broncos here because they got destroyed. And the Broncos defense looked really good in this one. Kind of a shocking performance from that Broncos defense just based on how pathetically bad their defense was last year. Now looking at how they performed in this game, if their defense could play like that, they're going to be a pretty good team. Bo Nix showed you a couple, he showed you in this game why he got that hype. I still don't think Bo Nix is really going to be a superstar or anything in the NFL. I still think it's kind of silly that there were people really buying into the hype just because he looked good in preseason and all that. People even picking them to be a playoff team, I still think is laughable. I still think the Broncos are a joke team. I still think they're going to win under 5 games this year. They're just too limited from a roster perspective. But Sean Payton is going to steal games like this. Here and there, there's going to be glimpses of Bo Nix looking really good. Sean Payton's scheme, we know he's one of the brightest offensive minds, and I think they just caught Tampa off guard here. Baker just had one of those games. Baker did not play good in this game, especially to start off the game. He had a really rough start, looked like a meltdown incoming. He had an interception, only threw for 163 passing yards, which is just not what we've been accustomed to Baker for this short season. I know it's only been 3 weeks, but Baker was one of the most productive QBs in the NFL, and then he just went out there and did not look good in this game whatsoever. And you pair that with the Broncos offense actually showing a pulse. That was a bad recipe for Tampa. So I'm not panicking over Tampa at all. I still think they're a really good football team, still probably a playoff team. But Denver steals one here, and one of the biggest upsets of the week, winning 26-7. So that puts my record at 1-1. Here's another massive upset. Last week was the week of upsets. Well, we had a couple more this week. Here's a big one between the Texans and the Vikings. I'm sure majority of the people in the country had Houston winning this game, myself included. When you look at how Houston won week 1 against the Colts and then week 2 against the Bears, they weren't the prettiest of wins. It's not like they came out and crushed people. They were still kind of close games, but from a roster standpoint and how good CJ was playing, I was like, I think they're going to be like a 1 seed in the AFC. That's how highly I thought of the Texans. They did not look the same. They did not look like the same team in this game against the Minnesota Vikings. And it leads me to say that I think the Vikings are now a legit team. You know, it's one thing to beat the Giants. Okay, week 1, they beat the Giants, whatever. Week 2, they beat the Niners, which was pretty impressive. Even though the Niners are struggling with injuries, they still have a shit ton of talent on that roster. So that was kind of surprising. And I was like, I said last week, if they beat the Texans, then fine, I'll start giving them credit. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't just beat the Texans. They fucking bludgeoned the Texans 34-7. So I think it's now time to start taking the Vikings serious. I think it's not even an unrealistic thing to think that they could threaten to win this division. When you look at how Darnold is playing, it's not like he's just doing this against bad teams. Like we said, he did this against the fucking 49ers defense and Houston's defense. So Sam Darnold looks like he's legit. I mean, this is the version of Sam Darnold we thought we were getting out of the draft, with at USC. This is why he went 3rd overall. He's that big athletic playmaker, and the thing that sunk his ship in New York and Carolina, he just made way too many reckless turnovers. But now you put him in this offense with Kevin O'Connell as one of the brightest offensive minds. This scheme is so quarterback friendly. You're not seeing these reckless turnovers from Sam Darnold anymore. He's now playing by far the best football of his career. And I don't think it's like a hyperbolic thing to say that Sam Darnold is now in the MVP race. I know, as fucking crazy as that sounds, but I think it's a realistic thing. When you look at how good he's playing, he has the Vikings at 3-0. I think there's only 4 or 5 teams in the NFL that are still undefeated. Vikings are one of them. And you also have to sing the praises of the defense, which I still don't think the Vikings have a ton of talent on their defense. I still think they are very limited from a roster perspective. However, that defense, the scheme they're running with Brian Flores is one of the most destructive units in the National Football League right now. I mean, even Brock Purdy was saying after that Niners game, like, what the hell was that? I've never seen anything like that. And then they go out here, the high-powered Texans offense with C.J. Stroud, at worst is like the 5th best quarterback in the NFL. At best is like the 3rd best quarterback. So that guy's a fucking stud. And he's got a ton of weapons on this team. You held that offense to just 7 points. So that, for me, is why I'm willing to now consider the Vikings a legit team. It'd be one thing if, like, Darnold was just lighting it up on his own and be like, okay, we've seen stuff like this happen before. People go on a couple game runs. But no, it's their defense is legit as well. So that's why I'm now going to start taking Minnesota pretty seriously. They have the right coach. They have the right defensive coordinator. The QB's playing really good. The Vikings, they're one of the most exciting teams right now. So that puts my record at 1-2 after getting that one wrong. Here's probably, not probably, this is my favorite one of the week, the Chargers at my Steelers. This was a beatdown. And I said in that short video I did, my reaction to this game, the Steelers have the best defense in football. When you look at what they've done, when they've held week 1 against Atlanta, looks like a pretty good offense just based on how they've played against, the Chiefs and the Eagles. We held that offense to 10 points. Then you have the Broncos, which they just hung 26 on Tampa. We held that offense to 6 points. And then Harbaugh's power run offense with Justin Herbert, only 10 points from them. And I feel like the detractors of the Steelers are just going to come out and say, oh, you only won this game because Justin Herbert got injured. Well, you didn't watch the game if that's your takeaway, because Justin Herbert went out of the game at like the middle of the 3rd quarter. Up until that point, was not particularly playing a very good football game, in all honesty. Like, he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great either. It's not like he was lighting it up. It's not like if he would have stayed in this game, they would have won, because our defense is just so physically imposing on the other teams. And everyone's been singing the praises of the Chargers O-line with Joe Alt and all them, but they just got like bludgeoned by this pass rush. So, I'm not a mathematician. I can't do it off the top of my head, but what would the average be the Steelers are holding teams to through week 3? Like we said, 10 in week 1, 6 in week 2, and 10 in week 3. That would probably average out. Sorry, the cats are fighting. That'd probably average out to something like, 8 points a game, something like that. The Steelers are holding opposing teams through week 3, 8 points a game. I mean, that recipe right there, that's going to translate to any game. And they say Defense wins championships. I mean, when you look at the rest of the AFC North, kind of looks like a tire fire, a dumpster fire right now. We're going to talk about the other teams in the AFC North, but we're 3-0. The Ravens and the Browns are 1-2, and the Bengals are winless. So it's looking pretty good right now to be a Steelers fan. Now, the back half of our schedule is extremely brutal, so I'm not going to say we're still going to win this division, but in terms of being a wild card team, we also have to quickly mention Justin Fields, who had by far and away his best game in the black and gold. Threw for over 250 yards. He had I can't remember, did he throw 2 touchdowns or 1? I know he had a rushing touchdown. And that interception was not his fault. It got bounced up in the air and picked off. Like, that was not Justin Fields' fault. Justin Fields looks really, really good in this Steelers offense because they're not asking him to do a whole lot, really. I mean, and that was kind of, I think, the fatal flaw with his tenure with the Bears is they kind of wanted him to be the savior. They were like, hey, Justin, go out there and just fucking pull plays out of your ass and carry our team. That's not what we're doing with the Steelers, what he's doing with the Steelers. There's a lot more structure here. The O-line is showing signs of improvement. Even though we have injuries on the O-line, it does look better. The run game is solid. Pickens is really good. Freiermuth's really good. I mean, just this offense, even though it's not lighting up the scoreboard, it's a translatable recipe because we're not doing a whole lot of crazy shit. It's very simplistic. And Justin Fields, we kind of are relying more on his athleticism, his ability to get out of the pocket and make plays, something we haven't had for a long, long time in Pittsburgh. So I don't want to get too hyped over the Steelers. Like I said, I'm still kind of hesitant to say they're going to win this division just because how brutal the back half of the schedule is. But if the defense keeps this up, they should be a lock 10 or 11 win team if Fields continues this as well. So a lot to like about the Steelers right now. The Chargers, a little scary if Herbert is going to be out for an extended period of time because after Heineke came in, their offense was like unwatchable after that. I mean, and it was against our defense, but still, that's scary for Chargers fans if Herbert is going to be gone for any point of time. Because even though they've been holding an emphasis on the run game in Harbaugh's offense, he's still the X factor on this team. And I did want to quickly mention, then we'll move off the Steelers. J.K. Dobbins was the leading rusher in the entire league going into this game and was just held to 44 rushing yards. I just wanted to point that out as well. So now we can move on. That puts my record at 2-2. Here's another one. I'm pretty proud of myself for getting this one right, and that was the Eagles at Saints. I feel like a lot of people picked the Saints in this one. Not me. I think I'm still a lot higher on the Eagles than most people. And I said this last week after my reactions is we need to start like pumping the brakes on the Saints. When I see people saying like, oh, Derek Carr's an MVP candidate, and oh, they're like a lock playoff team. Guys, pump the brakes. When you look at the two teams that they crushed, you had the Carolina Panthers. You could take me and you, the person listening to this video, if we went out there, we could probably carve up the Carolina Panthers defense. Then week 2, they crushed the Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defense is fucking terrible. So you literally you beat up on 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL. And then you play, I don't even think the Eagles' defense is that good, yet they just shut down that team. I think that the Eagles really exposed here how to stop the New Orleans Saints, holding them to just 12 points in this game. I at the end of the day, everyone was getting all excited about the Saints, and I still think they're going to be a good team this year, just not like the fucking Super Bowl winners like everyone wanted to say. It's Derek Carr. As good as he played in those games, at the end of the day, it's Derek Carr. I still do not trust Derek Carr, no matter what you tell me, no matter how good he looks beating up on the Panthers. I don't care. It's Derek Carr. I will not trust that guy, no matter what you tell me. And the Eagles, this was kind of an ugly one, 15-12, but they did get out of there with a win. Jalen continues to just not play very great, but Saquon is the lifeblood of this offense. Dallas Goedert had a really good game. So the Eagles, even though they I feel like they're not even playing that good, yet they're still 2-1, and they probably should be 3-0. It's just their defense was like Swiss cheese against the Falcons at the end of that game in week 2. So that's kind of a positive thing for the Eagles, because if Jalen's able to get back to the Jalen that he got paid to be, this team's going to be scary, because they're rattling off wins, and I don't even think they're playing that good. So the Eagles are now at 2-1. My record for the week is at 3-2. Next up, we have the Packers at Titans, the Malik Willis revenge game. Willis just continues to really surprise me. I didn't think he was an NFL player, but in this LaFleur scheme, he looks incredible. And I will say this, I don't even think this is a bold take or anything. I think Matt LaFleur is the heavy favorite to win Coach of the Year right now. Because when Jordan Love went out, I thought the Packers were going to lose every game Malik Willis started in. And now they're 2-0 in games where Willis has started. So I'm willing to give Matt LaFleur Coach of the Year right now. I think a lot of people would as well. I mean, it just makes a ton of sense when you look at how he's been able to get this offense to perform very well without their, max contract quarterback, Jordan Love, gone. So give LaFleur and the Packers a ton of credit. The Tennessee Titans are a fucking nightmare. They're a team that I kind of had high hopes on. Now, I never predicted them to be a playoff team or anything, but I thought they had some really good signings in the offseason. They invested in their O-line in the draft, getting J.C. Latham. They brought in veterans like L'Jarius Sneed, Tony Pollard, putting him in a unit with Tajay Spears. They also brought in Calvin Ridley. I liked a lot of these signings, and even though I thought the head coach, Callahan, I thought he was a downgrade from Vrabel, I said at least he's an offensive guy, so he can kind of try to help develop Will Levis. He's on the offensive side, so I was intrigued by this Titans team, but it all comes down to one fatal flaw, and that's the simple fact that Will Levis cannot play. Will Levis needs to be benched right now, or the Titans, it's already kind of probably over for the Titans this year. Maybe their best case scenario would be to just keep playing Will Levis, because that way you can try to get the number 1 overall pick. But if they seriously want to win football games, he's got to go. Mason Rudolph, I know a lot about Mason Rudolph, being a Steelers fan. It's not like he's a superstar or anything. Obviously, he's a backup, but he just does his job really well. He came into the Steelers last year, and we won out the rest of the games. I can't remember. It was either 3-0 or 4-0 at the end of the year with Mason Rudolph. And he led us to a playoff berth. So Mason Rudolph, I think, is a vastly better NFL player than Will Levis. If the Titans still want to compete, they got to make the change here. But give a ton of credit to the Packers. Like I said, LaFleur right now, heavy favorite for Coach of the Year. That puts my record at 4-2. Next up, we have the Giants at Browns. Talk about just these two teams are just dumpster fires, so to see them go up against each other, kind of comical. I did disgustingly take the Browns. After week 1, after they got embarrassed by Dallas, I said it's probably going to be a long time before I pick the Browns in a game. And what did I do? I went back on myself and I picked them in week 3 to beat the Giants, because my philosophy was as bad as the Browns are, I just think the Giants are vying for that number 1 overall pick. That's how bad they are, and I still think that. I heard some people kind of overreacting like Malik Neighbors is going to save Daniel Jones in New York. No, he's not. Daniel Jones is still fucking terrible. He's still on one of the worst contracts in the NFL. I don't care. So that doesn't really change a whole lot for me with the Giants. I still think they're really bad. I think this just kind of shows you how bad the Browns really are and how bad Deshaun is. He got off to a good start, threw that bomb to Amari, but then the rest of this game was just dreadful from Deshaun Watson. Jerome Ford did nothing in this game as well. The Browns, I told you guys going into this year that they weren't going to be a playoff team, because what they did last year was just simply not sustainable. Starting 5 different QBs and then still winning 11 games has never been done in the history of the NFL, and it's just not a repeatable recipe, and anytime you have to rely on Deshaun, you're going to lose, because that guy sucks, and he showed you that in this game. So shame on me for picking the Browns. I am embarrassed about that. That puts my record at 4-3. Next up, we have the Bears at Colts. So I did pick the Colts in this one. I did get that one right. This was kind of an ugly win for the Colts. And I'm starting to get really scared about Anthony Richardson. I really am, because I don't know if even though they won this game, he just didn't look good. And obviously last week losing to the Packers in a big meltdown loss, throwing 3 picks, I'm starting to get kind of worried about Anthony Richardson. The big problem with him is his accuracy. And as an NFL starting quarterback, you need to be able to complete the simple little layup passes, and that's what Richardson struggles with. He has that potential to just make those insane throws. He still had arguably the best throw of the year so far. That one off his back foot to Pierce for 60 yards and a touchdown. But he struggles with the easy stuff, and that is something that is a bit of a point of concern with me for Anthony Richardson. So that's something to definitely continue to keep monitoring. As for the Bears, I mean, clearly the most overrated team going into this year, and I bought into the hype as well. I predicted them to be a playoff team. I had them as the 7th seed of the NFC. They're not sniffing playoffs this year. This is just not a very good football team. The offensive line is still really, 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 really bad. And it showed some signs of improvement at the end of last year. They made some moves the offseason. I thought their line was going to look a lot better. Their line's just terrible. And until they get that fixed, Caleb Williams is still going to look like a struggler, because the thing that made him so special at USC was the unique pass blocking and the way he was able to move around in the pocket. He doesn't have any time to do that in the NFL because the line is so bad. He has no run support. DeAndre Swift has been a complete bust. So Caleb, he looked decent in this game. He had a lot of throwing yards, not any touchdowns, or he might have. I can't remember. But he had over 200-something passing yards, had a couple impressive throws. Roma Dunze had his best game as a pro. But they still lost this game because that offense is just, it looks bad. And I would be kind of surprised the way that this team's playing. I'd be surprised if Matt Eberflus keeps his job, because when you look around at this division, it's all really good offenses with offensive coaches. In Green Bay, you got LaFleur kicking people's ass with Malik Willis, of all people. That just shows you how good of an offensive mind he is. Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell's making Sam Darnold look like the fucking MVP. And then Detroit, they've been kind of struggling a little bit here and there, but they're still 2-1. They were just in the NFC Championship game. The Bears had all this hype with the offense, with all the stuff they brought in, with Caleb coming in, and their offense has been putridly bad, dreadfully bad. And I think the easiest thing to point to that is the coaching here, because what if Kevin O'Connell had Caleb Williams? What if Matt LaFleur had Caleb Williams? It'd be a different story, I think. So I don't see Matt Eberflus lasting very long, especially if they just continue to lose games like this. But yeah, I'm now officially pounding the gavel. The Bears are not making the playoffs. There's no way with that offensive line, with how bad their run game is. They're just asking Caleb to be their savior. They're throwing him out there and like, hey, Caleb, work your magic and carry our team. It's not a sustainable recipe in the NFL, especially for a rookie. So, like I said, I did get that one right. That puts my record at 5-3. Next, we have Dolphins going to Seattle to play the Seahawks. We don't have to talk much about this one. It's pretty simple to know what the problem is with the Dolphins. Tua's gone. I'm pretty surprised that they didn't go out and sign anyone. Tannehill was out there. I'd take Ryan Tannehill off his couch any day over Skylar Thompson. I think they're going to really start having real conversations about that after how pathetic their offense looked in this game. And people always want to talk about how Tua's overrated. He got overpaid with that contract. Well, look at this offense without him at the helm. That's a lot of people say that about that Shanahan philosophy type offense, which they're running in Miami, is the quarterback is just carried by the scheme and the offensive weapons. Well, Skylar Thompson was picked before Brock Purdy. So this shows you what typically 7th round picks look like. They look like what Skylar Thompson looked like in this game, which is fucking terrible. So that, I think, kind of just proves that Brock Purdy, he's not just a product of the Shanahan system. He actually is a very good quarterback because Shanahan, when he had Trey Lance, it was a disaster. And Brock Purdy, like I said, your typical 7th round pick looks like Skylar Thompson. Brock Purdy has really played well, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but really, really rough for Miami. They have to figure something out at quarterback. It doesn't have to be Tannehill, but they need to go out there and sign someone because this is just unacceptable. If you're trying to win games, this team is a disaster without Tua. And Seattle, I'm pretty sure, they're undefeated. Seattle is one of the few undefeated teams left. So Seattle, give them a lot of credit. Their defense looks sweet. Geno Smith is playing really good football. The Seahawks, I think the Seahawks right now, it's not a crazy thing to say that they're going to be a playoff team just based on how they look. Their defense looks really good. Their quarterback's playing really well. The head coach, Mike McDonald, looks like a great hire. So a lot of optimism coming out of Seattle. They look like a really, really, really good football team. I don't know quite what their ceiling is, but this is a very repeatable recipe in the NFL. They're going to win a lot of games this year if they can continue to play like this. Here's another massive upset. We had the Panthers at the Raiders. I don't think anyone saw this coming. Or if the Panthers knew this, they would have just started off the year with Andy Dalton at the helm, because he looked like Joe Montana out there. 3 touchdowns, I think, in the first half. I can't remember, but he was incredible in this game. And Bryce Young is just not – this is like the worst possible thing for Bryce Young, because it shows you that he was kind of the biggest problem with that offense, is because what did they score week 1? I think 10 points, and then week 2 they only scored 3 points, and then one game with Andy Dalton they scored 36. With the same exact team, the same exact offensive line, the same exact weapons, the same exact coaches. Everyone wanted to blame everyone else for Bryce Young, make excuses for him. The line sucks. They can't block for him. He doesn't have any weapons. Andy Dalton walks in as a backup, as like a 55-year-old backup. Andy Dalton walks in there and looks like Joe Montana in that same system. So I don't want to overact too much. It's just one game, but I don't think Bryce Young's ever going to start another game with the Carolina Panthers. And I don't even know if he's going to continue his career in the league as a backup. It's just a very big indictment on him. And the Raiders, they kind of showed you what they were in this one. Even though the Raiders had, they were scrappy. They beat the Ravens last week. Doesn't really change a whole lot for me. Anytime you're throwing Gardner Minshew out there, I don't care. I just don't buy Gardner Minshew at all. And I think the Raiders are another one of those teams that are going to be like a bottom 10, bottom 5 team pretty easily. So that puts my record at 6-4 after getting that one wrong. Here was probably the biggest game of the week, Ravens at Cowboys. I took the Ravens here. I told you guys, anytime the Cowboys are in big games against playoff-level teams, they always shrink. They always shit their pants. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because I feel like I'm just going to sound like a broken record. If you've listened to me for a while, you've heard all these points that I'm going to make. Especially their defense now. Their defense is coming to the forefront as the biggest problem with this team, because usually when they blew big games, it was to the fault of Dak Prescott, who just threw the game away with reckless plays, just being too limited as an overall player. Their defense was the main problem here. Dak actually had a fine game. The defense got totally eviscerated in this game. And I remember saying earlier, their defense is vastly overrated. And I had Cowboys fans coming at me like, overrated, yeah, we'll see when we play the Steelers. Well, I don't think we have to wait till then. I think we kind of know now after seeing what Derek Carr and the Saints did to your defense, and then now what Derrick Henry and the boys just did to your defense. And this score, 28-25, does not reflect this game whatsoever. This was a pummeling. This was a fucking beatdown of the Dallas Cowboys. Derek Henry had so many runs in this game where he was 10-plus yards already and just wasn't even touched. Like, the Cowboys' defense just looks like they don't know what they're doing, and they have talent on this defense. They look clueless, and this is a point I made going into the year that I got a lot of pushback on. I think Mike Zimmer's just kind of outdated in 2024. And I heard a lot of people out there, for some reason, thinking he was going to be like this big upgrade over Dan Quinn. No, Dan Quinn had his problems. Like, they always got exposed in the big games. But regular season Dallas defense usually would just crush people, and they were really good under Dan Quinn at like building off of momentum and just continuing to pile on them. This defense looks like it doesn't have a pulse. It doesn't look like it's very good. And I think Mike Zimmer just brings a very different philosophy to the team than Dan Quinn did. So that's a problem. Mike McCarthy, they're 1-2 right now. And who's to say they're going to, I don't think it's like a sure thing they're going to beat the Giants. So let's just say hypothetically they lose to the Giants. They start this year 1-3 with Washington looking good, with Philly, even though not playing good, they're still winning games. This could explode very quickly. They paid Dak a lot. They paid CD a lot. Micah wants a lot of money. I could see Mike McCarthy getting kicked out of here before the season's even done because they're just not very good. They're just not a very good football team. As for the Ravens, Look what happens when you fucking use Derrick Henry. I mean, wow, what a big surprise. I mean, the first game against the Chiefs, they gave him 13 carries. The game against the Raiders, again, didn't use him a whole lot. And then you had Harbaugh coming out and say, yeah, we didn't bring him in here to give him like 30 carries a game. That's not the style we want to use Derrick Henry in. Well, you fucking used him the right way in this game, and look what happened. You crushed the opposing team, and Derrick Henry has officially beat all the washed allegations. 150 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, was the lifeblood, the heart and soul of this offense. Lamar had a good game, but this was Derrick Henry's game. He showed why he is still the king. So that puts my record at 7-4. Next up, we have the 49ers at Rams. So with like basically half the Rams roster being in the fucking IR, or the ER, excuse me, this is baffling to me. Like, what is going on with the 49ers right now? We're going to have to start really talking about that. Maybe I'll do a separate video just talking about the Niners, but yeah, you had to win this game. I mean, the Rams have so many injuries on this roster. Basically, their whole O-line's gone. Both their stud receivers are gone. They have a bunch of defensive injuries as well, and they still were able to win this game. It came down to just being like a chess match between McVay and Shanahan, and McVay really went off in this one. I mean, he coached a clinic here. Stafford had a good game. Kyron Williams had a good game. Even though the 49ers, like Brock Purdy still had a pretty good game as well. He threw like 2 or 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, played a clean game. So there's something really wrong with the 49ers right now. I know that they have their injuries, but so do the fucking Rams. The Rams have more injuries, and they still won this game. So there's something going on with the Niners. I don't know exactly what it is. We have to talk about Brandon Ayuk, though, because all the shit he stirred up in the offseason about getting paid, he's now a $30 million wide receiver. It's been kind of pathetic what Brandon Ayuk has done this year. He's been an absolute dud, and maybe you can blame that on the rust of his holdout. He wasn't with the team in the offseason, but this is unacceptable play from Brandon Ayuk. That's not good. They are starting to now clearly miss Christian McCaffrey. It was kind of a fun story to start off with Jordan Mason, like, oh, Shanahan does it again. He just finds another dude on the street and makes him an elite guy. They severely miss Christian McCaffrey. That is one big thing this offense truly, truly misses. So, like I said, I'm probably going to make another video just talking all about the 49ers, but this was an ugly loss. To lose to the Rams with that many injuries is kind of unacceptable. That puts my picks at 7-5. Next up, we have the Lions at Cardinals. I rolled with the Cardinals again. I rolled with them the first 2 weeks. I figured, why the hell not? Kyler was looking really good. MHJ was finally kind of finding his place on this team. They lost. I'm probably not going to be picking the Cardinals as much as I did the first 3 weeks. I still think Kyler is really good. I still think this is a really scrappy team, but I will give the Cardinals credit for this. Their defense was actually not bad in this game, holding the Lions to 20 points because the Lions were one of the most high-powered offenses last year. They were dropping like 40 bombs on people, so that's kind of a little silver lining for the Cardinals is their defense actually didn't look too bad in this one, but they still did lose. The Lions, I mean, I think the Lions just kind of figured out who they are, and that is a running team. They got away from that in week 2 against Tampa, where they just asked Jared Goff to do way too much. He had 55 passing attempts to Baker's 19 passing attempts in week 2. They got away from that in week 3, and they went to more of, hey, we have the best offensive line in the league, if not the top 3 O-line in the league, and we have the best running back 10 in the league. I don't know. How about we just fucking use that, and it paid off in this one. So I should have known better. I should have went with the Lions in this one, but, I am biased towards Kyler, so I did go with the Cards. Didn't do good for me this week. That puts my record at 7-6. Then, of course, we had the big controversial Sunday night game, Chiefs at Falcons. Of course, I went with the Chiefs. Like I said, I don't see me picking against the Chiefs at all this year. And I've been really, I've had people come at me for saying the refs helped the Chiefs. I don't know how you can defend this one. This is absolutely unexcusable. Kyle Pitts got fucking suplexed in the back of the end zone and no flag. I mean, that is just absolutely unacceptable from the refs. Whenever they already have all these allegations of helping out the Chiefs. This one was fucking egregious. Like, I don't know how as a Chiefs fan you could realistically look someone in the eyes and just tell them, hey, that wasn't a penalty. Like, it's completely unexcusable. And I don't want to make the whole game about that because the Chiefs did play a good game. The Mahomes-Rice connection looks legit. I think Rashee Rice is really very quickly climbing his way into the top 10 receivers in the NFL right now. They did miss Pacheco. That Steele guy is just not very good. Kelsey's been very bad. But the Mahomes-Rashee Rice connection is really, really good. The Chiefs' defense in certain spots still looks really good. And Atlanta, again, this is about as good a loss as you can have. You should have probably won this game. You got a call that went against you. Raheem Morris even said after the game, like, I don't know what you want me to say, man. I like my money. He wasn't going to come out here and criticize the refs, but it's clear that was just bullshit. So it's the Chiefs. I mean, what do you want me to say? They're going to continue to win games. Atlanta, I think they're going to be fine. Even though they lost this one, they look like a pretty potent offense. Their defense looks pretty good as well. I think Atlanta's going to be fine. Let's go to the Monday night games. We had the Jags-Bills. The Jags are just a fucking disgrace. The Jags are done. I'm pounding the gavel on them. I already did last week, but now it's just like the final nail in the coffin for the Jags. This game was over at halftime. It was. And anything that happened after halftime just didn't really matter in this game because it was so unbelievably lopsided by that. It didn't matter. Josh Allen continues to be a generational all-time talent. He was fucking insane in this game. I think he had 4 touchdowns, no turnovers. I think he had a fumble. He didn't have a pick, but he had a fumble. I think right now Josh Allen is the favorite for MVP. So I would lock that in on any sports book you can. I would bet Josh Allen for MVP based off how he's playing right now after losing Stephon Diggs. And yet this offense continues to be so potent. James Cook has really changed this offense where Allen doesn't have to take as many big hits running the ball, and the defense is still really good as well. I thought they were going to struggle a lot, especially early on after losing a lot of their guys in their secondary. It doesn't matter. They found some really good players. DeMar Hamlin even got a pick in this game. Rasul Douglas is really good. Von Miller looks revitalized. So a lot to like with the Bills. They're definitely a team to watch out this year. I said going in, their Super Bowl window is probably closed just because of how much talent they lost. Well, Josh Allen is Josh Allen, and when he's on your team, your Super Bowl window is definitely open. The Jags, they're a fucking disaster. They are an absolute dumpster fire. I think Doug Peterson's going to get fired. I think Trent Baalke, the GM, is going to get fired. I don't even know how you would fix this team because Trevor Lawrence, I think that contract is going to quickly become one of the worst in the NFL. He's too limited. He's not good enough to carry a team. And I'm someone who defended Trevor Lawrence. I was like, well, what do you want them to do? Like, start over from scratch? Like, T-Law has showed some promise, but looking at how he's performed in the first 3 games, he's just simply not good enough. He's not good enough to carry a team. If he had a lot around him, I think he'd be fine. But he doesn't have a lot around him. It's not a very good roster. And the way he's getting paid, he's going to have to carry this team. He's not good enough to do that. This team's too limited. I think they're just going to clean house here pretty soon. I don't see them winning very many games this year. Kind of crazy what happened with the Jags, just looking at their trajectory. That year 2 of T-Law, they made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They were like on cloud 9. I thought they had one of the brightest futures in the NFL. And they've, since then, just gone on to be extremely disappointing. And then, of course, we had the Commanders at Bengals. This was an absolute thrill ride of a game, back and forth. No turnovers in this game, no punts in this game. And there was, I think, only 4 flags thrown in this game. So pretty clean football. If you like offense, you would have liked this game. It was back and forth. The Bengals, their number one thing for me was their red zone offense was just not good. They were, especially earlier in the game, they were struggling to capitalize on red zone moments where they were just settling for field goals. Burrow looked a little off in this one. He was missing some wide open ones. But, of course, the biggest story coming out of this is Jaden Daniels. And I put out a short last night talking about that. This is the coming out party. Jaden Daniels has arrived. That guy is a superstar. By far and away looks like the best rookie. And I just think on paper, like Caleb still has a better team in terms of the weapons he has. Probably has a better defense on paper, but Jaden Daniels is probably the better player as of right now. It's only been 3 games, but right now Jaden Daniels looks like the best player from that draft. I don't think this is an overreaction because he was doing the little stuff right. And that's what we talked about with Anthony Richardson. Like, he'll make those wow plays, but he can't do the little things. The amount of third downs they converted on where Jane Daniels held the poise of a veteran, delivering these layup throws for these easy first downs. And another big thing is he slid a lot. Whenever he would run out of the pocket for like 4 yards, he'd slide. That's a big thing. That was an area of concern with Jaden because he's not the biggest guy, so he can't take a ton of hits. He was sliding this whole game. They kept showing Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury just ecstatic that this guy is sliding because he looks incredible. I mean, this game, 21 of 23 passing the ball. I think that is an NFL record or something like that. 91% throwing the ball. He had 250 passing yards. He had 2 touchdowns in the air. He had 1 with his legs. It's just insane. It's really, really insane to see this. It's always exciting to see. The Bengals, I don't know what to say. I don't get how the Bengals are so confident and so sure of themselves whenever they're an 0-3 team. You know, you had Cam Taylor-Britt saying that he's not really special. This is a very elementary level offense. They're kind of coddling him. He's just not really that good. And he comes out here and fucking does this to them. And you also had Jamar Chase saying, we're the team to beat in the AFC. Dude, you're 0-3. You're 0-3. I don't get where this confidence comes from with the Bengals. I really don't understand it. But good on the Commanders. I mean, they look really good right now. Their tight ends looked really good in this one. McCaffrey and Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, at the age of 63 years old, still getting wide open in this one. Of course, the connection between Jaden and Scary Terry, they had a couple incredible plays, that 55-yard bomber. And then you had that game-sealing touchdown at the end, an incredible play from Scary Terry. So that duo, Scary, watch out for them. That has been my reaction to Week 3. So I did go 9-7 this week. That puts my overall record for the season on at 29-19. So I'm hoping to get that better. But it is what it is. Like I said earlier, let me know down in the comments how your picks did. How's your team doing right now? Let me know all that down in the comments. If you made it this far, appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe.